Welcome to the Unlist. Today I'm going to discuss two sides of the same coin, Tastemakers versus Gatekeepers. And this is a topic that's related in some degree to the previous episode, which was about influencers. And to recap on that, influencers are a group of people, not just within the fragrance community, but on the internet at large, that are, in a sense, freelance marketing specialists. They are people that make a career out of promoting the products that are given to them through PR lists from brands that either don't want to spend enough money for traditional advertising or do this to supplement their traditional advertising. So basically, they take things for free, turn around and promise to promote them to some degree, and then they also profit from the passive income that they get from the platforms that they use, like YouTube. And of course, things like commission sales links and other ways of making income also can come down the pipe if you're successful enough. And then the end game of some influencers, not all of them, but the end game of some of them is to actually launch their own brand of products at some point if they get enough social clout and enough capital from their influencing to start a business of some kind and make a product that's usually in some way related to the thing that they're promoting. So in this case, fragrance influencers, some of them at some point launch their own perfume brand, or like automotive influencers, they usually have some kind of service that they end up launching. Some of them do. We've seen Jeffree Star, which was a makeup influencer, beauty cosmetics, launch his own makeup line. So influencers can be useful, but as I discussed in that previous video, they can also sometimes do things a little bit deceptively in order to get more followers, to get more fame, to get access to more things to promote. So some of them kind of lie and grift their way, into prominence. And then of course some go so far down the rabbit hole that they start to become cults of personality, and it becomes more about self-promotion than about the products, and then they lose the plot, right? They kind of become a parody of themselves, those are the ones I call clowns and such. Tastemakers and Gatekeepers, though, they are similar purpose, but they're not necessarily trying to profit off of influencing people. And the word tastemaker has been around actually a lot longer than the internet has. And you used to hear the word tastemaker applied to critics, socialites within certain artistic or entertainment circles that have enough push and pull to determine what general popular taste is. So producers, various other impresarios effectively can govern what's good taste in a given field where they exist, unless they become tastemakers. So an example of a tastemaker might be a really well-respected art critic, for example, or a curator of a museum, someone who writes a column about art that has a lot of connections and social networks. In the days before the internet, that was a lot more difficult. But in general, tastemakers have been around for a long time, and some artists don't like them because they don't like kowtowing. They like, striking their own path. People like Andy Warhol and Salvador Dali were not fans of tastemakers in general, for instance. Also, within music scenes, certain tastemakers, magazine editors, such like that, label execs, some bands don't like to have to be beholden to someone else's taste. They like to do their own. Again, every artist wants to do their own thing. But tastemakers in general are very passive in the way they go about doing it, because usually it's not like their intent to dictate good taste. It's just that their opinions carry so much weight that they end up becoming a tastemaker by default. We see that in the online fragrance community with prominent reviewers or content creators that are not influencers. So people who do honest reviews, people who create fragrance content that's not necessarily promoting the fragrances, it's just general fragrance content. So people like Persolaise or Barbara Herman, Claire V, these folks aren't necessarily influencers. They're not really pushing a product. They're just critics, reviewers, and such, but their taste ends up becoming the taste, or at least ends up influencing the taste of those who read their blogs, watch their videos, so on and so forth. And they may not wake up in the morning and go, you know what, I'm going to be a tastemaker. That's not really their MO. Their MO is just doing what they enjoy and maybe making a little money on the side from it. But they still end up becoming tastemakers. And that's the real difference between, like, say, a tastemaker and an influencer. Tastemaker is just someone whose taste is trusted to such a degree by such a wide variety of people that they have passive influence. Because if perfumers and such that are not big corporate designer brands, they don't care, clearly, or big money luxury brands, again, also don't care. But anyone that's in more like the grassroots level, or what we call the ground floor, anyone who's kind of on the ground floor, and they want their fragrances to be respected to some degree, they want to find an audience, they're going to look at what prominent figures in the community are talking about, and that will probably, maybe not directly, but will again passively influence the kind of fragrances they make. So if you see someone who goes gaga over vintage shippers, for instance, and some artisanal perfumer who's going to be like, yeah, that's the path I want to take. So the tastemakers not only can affect the people on the consumption side, but they can also affect people on the production side as well. Just usually not people who are so high up the food chain that they just don't care. Again, IFF, Javad, they don't care about tastemakers, trust me. They don't care about influencers either. They don't care about anybody except for the shareholders and the upper management. That's only folks who they actually kowtow to, nobody else. So gatekeepers gatekeepers are kind of the ugly side of that coin, the tail side. So tastemakers, by virtue of them just making their content, they sort of carve out a certain perspective, a certain view on fragrances, and then that generates a certain taste that you can take in whole or in part. But they don't typically try to dictate what you can and can't like. They just say, oh, my favorite thing is aromatic fougères, or I love vintages, or I love naturals, whatever. So people who kind of follow them end up sort of, acquiring some elements of their taste. But they don't sit there and say, don't wear that, that's trash. Don't wear that, that's trash. Don't do that, Or if you do this, then I don't recognize you. They don't sit there and limit and control. So gatekeepers are the other side of that coin. Gatekeepers and people who have been in any kind of scene that involves consumption or collection of some goods. So comic books, video games, music, once again, visual art, cinema, beer even. Like, oh no, you gotta drink IPAs or you're not a real beer lover. Like stuff like that. Every community like that has these people who have deigned to make themselves authority on everything. And they go beyond just having a taste and having enough respect or enough clout to have others adopt their taste. They actually willfully go out there and they try to more or less control. They gatekeep. The literal definition of gatekeeping is, I am on the inside of the gate and I determine who can come in and who stays out, right? I let you in or I don't let you in. That's what gatekeeping is, right? Literally. So whatever the criteria is, the thing that they're gatekeeping, So in this case, if we're mentioning fragrances, whether it's a vintages or if it's artisanals or it's fragrances made with all naturals or versus synthetics, or its price point, it has to be over a certain price point or it's not real perfume art in my, So the gatekeepers literally police, and they go so far as to invalidate people who do what they think is the wrong thing. So they don't just give advice. They don't give recommendations. They don't give direction, right? Like tastemakers give direction. Even influencers who have an agenda give direction of some kind. The gatekeepers don't give direction. They just wait until you make a mistake, and then they tell you that you fucked up. So that's not constructive. It's very critical and destructive. So, you know, the tastemaker will say, hey, I love vintage Koros. You know, you should go check it out. Or any bottle of Koros, really. But, you know, I love vintage, so I think you would enjoy the vintage the most, or whatever. And they kind of leave it at that, right? The gatekeeper doesn't say anything. The gatekeeper just kind of sits there and waits for you to go buy the Koros, which maybe someone else told you to get the Koros, right? You watched a video, you know, whether it's like one of my videos, or maybe Ramsey or JJ or someone else who likes old fragrances, and then you go and you bought the Koros, right? But you didn't buy the right one. You bought like you bought the bottles from the early 2000s. You bought the Gucci PPR bottles or whatever. You didn't get the original 1981 Charles of the Ritz bottle, you know, which only came in a splash initially. You got something a little later. And they're like, oh, you don't have the real Koros. Don't talk to me. Don't come in here. You don't know what Koros is. You've never smelled true Koros unless you smell this old-ass bottle. And then you're like, okay, well, how much is this old-ass one? Oh, $400. Are you kidding me? So they're like, yeah, but you don't really know the real deal, you know. Anything that's not this. And it's the same game with the expensive fragrances, you know. Oh, you have to get certain batches of Aventus. You just can't buy a bottle of Aventus. You know, you have to buy the 2012 batch or whatever with the smoky pineapples in it. You get something newer than that, and you've never truly lived until you've had this. You don't know. Your bottle of Aventus is not real or something, right? You know, or same exercise with like Roja d'Ave. Oh, well, you can't get the Parfum Cologne version of Scandal or Danger. You have to get the full Parfum Extrait version. So the $300 one, right, in the clear glass, that one's not good enough. You need to get that $800 one. You got to go get the $800 one, or else you haven't really. It's just, you know, and it gets more and more stupid all. So you can't have sandalwood unless it's Mysore sandalwood. So forget if it's New Caledonian sandalwood. Forget if it's Eastern sandalwood from China or something. It's got to be literally very specifically the Mysore sandalwood. If you have any other kind of sandalwood oil, even if it's real, okay, real, natural, came from a Santal albumum tree, okay, real sandalwood oil, but you didn't get it from Mysore, India, so you don't have the real deal GTFO. Get good, kid. Get good. Why are you so bad at this? You noob. Get good. Chase you on out of here. Go delete your account. Go delete your business account. Get out of here, right? And then they also squash other people's happiness too, because, like I said, someone will roll into Base Notes, or they'll roll into Instagram, or maybe they'll enter a YouTube comment or whatever, and they'll be like, hey, yeah, so I got that bottle of Guerlain Heritage that you were talking about, and it smells fantastic. I love it. Thank you so much for recommending the Heritage. And then the gatekeeper goes, oh, but you don't have the gold cap, do you? And then they're like, oh, well, I just bought the one that I found, at Fragrance Net or whatever, the either the newest one, the square one, or I got the one before that, which was the tall bottle, but that's whatever the one I got. And I like it. It smells great. But see, you don't have the gold one, so you don't really know what real Heritage is. That's the fake, reformulated, destroyed, shadow of its former self. It's a usurper. It's a pretender to the throne. Like that. And they just kind of go off. Meanwhile, the person with the bottle of Heritage is like shriveling like this, like that. And they feel like they've just, made a massive mistake, like they've pushed the red button, they've launched the nukes or something, and the world's going to end now. And then someone like that, especially if they're very new to the community and they don't have a lot of backbone yet, they don't feel confident about their taste, or they don't feel confident about their choices, you can literally chase them on out of the fragrance community. They're going to take the bottle of Heritage, they're going to return it, and they're just going to go back to wearing Axe or whatever, because they're going to be like, these fragrance people are insane. I'm not going to deal with these fragrance people. They're out of their mind, I bought a bottle of perfume, and they basically told me to go F myself or whatever. They chewed me out over it, and I'm just not dealing with that. And that's why the tastemakers are cool, because they can lead you down rabbit holes. But the gatekeepers are just completely toxic. And let's not get it twisted. Let's not get it twisted. You're allowed to have an opinion, clearly, if you prefer Mysore over other forms of sandalwood oil, if you prefer the deepest, oldest possible bottles of a fragrance, assuming you can get ones in good condition, of course. You know, there's a lot of ones that are turned and stuff. If you're able to get well-preserved bottles of old fragrances, then, you know, kudos, that's your preference. We can shake hands, we can be friends. If you think that perfumes below a certain price point are garbage, you know, that's fine if you express that in a way that's not rude, and if it's not a volunteered information where a person didn't even need it. So if someone's just saying, "Hey, I bought Quorum," or "Hey, I bought Polo," and you're like, "Hey, you know what? That's cool. I love that fragrance. You should check out the older ones. The older ones are a little bit this, they're a little bit that," right? You do it constructively. You go, "Hey, you made a good choice. You know, I applaud you with my golf clap. You made a good choice there. But the older one, you know, might be a little bit better. But get a sample or whatever. Don't go buy the same bottle twice again. Just check it out. If you think what you have is good enough, then it's cool, right? Don't be like, oh, you bought that garbage, that fake, weak, again, just don't, especially if the person didn't ask, right? The person didn't ask. So why are you going to do that? If you want to volunteer something constructively, you're good. But if you're just going to shit on them and shoot them down without them even asking for it, that's like, you know, who does that, right? It's like, you know, you come over someone's house and it's like you sit down at their dinner table and it's like they start serving you food or whatever, but you're looking over at the kitchen. You're like, you know, you could have put that casserole in like a Pyrex dish, right? You didn't have to put it in that middle dish. They're gonna be like, why are you telling me how to serve my food to you? Like, do you want to eat or not? Right? It's like you volunteer stuff like that. It's awkward. Like, why would you do that? So some of the gatekeeping may just be a lack of social skill, right? A lack of social awareness. Maybe the people who do it have some other issues. I don't want to be a psychologist here because I'm not a doctor, but maybe there's something else at play. Maybe some level of neurodivergence or communicative issues where they don't realize that they're coming off. It's a possibility that they don't mean it. So I want to throw that out there as a caveat. Maybe they don't mean it. They're just so excited and so enthusiastic about the thing that they just blah, 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 just comes out. So I will entertain a possibility, but still get better. Get better. So, and as far as tastemakers go, to circle back, tastemakers are just that. They make the taste, but you don't have to drink the Kool-Aid. You know, it's not Scientology. You're not joining the cult. You know, it's not Jim Jones. You're not in Guyana, okay? You're not signed up for nothing. So if someone who is really renowned, like a Luca Turin, Tanya Sanchez, you know, Gabe Oppenheim, has a certain taste in fragrances, you know, whether it's aforementioned names on YouTube or myself, I am not exempt from this, has a certain taste, and a lot of your friends listen to that person, you know, a lot of your friends read their content, buy their books, watch their videos, but you don't necessarily agree with it, please don't force yourself. You know, if I tell you Avon is the best stuff in the world and you just buy like a half dozen different Avons and you just don't like them, don't keep buying more Avons thinking that it's something wrong with your nose, that your nose is broken. I'm right, you're wrong, and you just got to keep trying harder until you get it. You shouldn't have to do that. You shouldn't have to keep trying until it clicks. So if you trust someone's taste, but their taste is rubbing up against your taste and it's not correct, if you keep finding that you're not having the same experience that you're being promised by the person on the other end of the screen, then maybe they're wrong. To you, they're wrong. Maybe Avon's not for you, okay? In my case, using myself as an example, maybe Avon's not for you. Same thing with Luca Turin. He says this perfume has 5 stars or whatever, and then you buy it and you hate it. Don't think there's something wrong with you because you didn't like it. Just, people have individual tastes. There's no accounting, right? It's the old saying, there's no accounting for good taste. So just you have to take it with a grain of salt always. And that's been it, the video of Tastemakers versus Gatekeepers. Hope you enjoyed it and have a good one.